Welcome to the Real People, Real Business show, where we're talking with business owners who are in the trenches, everyday people who are working hard and have relevant and inspiring stories that you can relate to. Everyone we speak to is actively building and growing their business and is here to share their experiences, lessons, wisdom, and guidance so you can be inspired to take action towards your own goals. Today is such a special episode for me. I am so overwhelmingly excited to welcome my friend, client, co-conspirator, Gina Horkey. She is an entrepreneur extraordinaire that left her 9-to-5 job to build her dream business of helping others live the life that they want. Through her successful brands, Horkey Handbook and Podcast Production School, Gina uses her incredible gift of teaching to help others grow their skill set to build their dream jobs. Welcome to the show, Gina. Thanks so much for coming to share your story today and to chat with me about everything that we've been working on in the last, almost a year.
Part one of infinity. I am excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Part one of infinity, indeed. I think we're the idea machine, right?
We talk all day, every day, so we don't run out of topics just in our normal lives, and we'll try and capture some of that brilliance for those that are tuning in.
Yeah, this is going to be a 4-hour episode, so okay, listen, tell us first, before we get started and we really dive into the things that we talk about all the time, give the listeners a little bit of a backstory. Where'd you get started? How'd you get started? What was really driving you to build this really successful business?
Yeah, so that's a great question that we can unpack layer by layer, right? I think that what comes to mind is I've been listening to a book this morning and it talked about how successful people are called lucky. And that's absolutely not true. And that, you'll see these fly by night flashy headlines of entrepreneur makes millions overnight. And really, a lot of the work and time has gone into that point of arrival. And what I'm so excited about with my journey is my point of arrival never comes. And that might seem disheartening to many, but it's just because it's more of that evolution of a journey, which I know it's the journey, not the destination. We all hate hearing that, but it's so true. And I don't have anymore this master plan where I think that it's going to result. Instead, it's just here's what we have going on right now. We can look at how we got here and we can work towards someplace that we want to go next. But if we remain open and have a positive, abundant mindset, we might go in a completely different direction that's better than we ever thought possible. And so I guess when I summarize kind of the journey up until now, I didn't have this concrete plan for having a education or a teaching business 7+ years ago when I got started an online business. What I wanted to do was leave kind of the corporate 9-to-5 grind at that point, because I'd been conditioned like so many others that are maybe tuning in, that what you do to be successful in life is to get hopefully good grades in high school so you can get into a decent college, work your tail off there in order to earn your degree, and then start moving your way up the corporate ladder. And I think I was blessed, at the time. I probably didn't feel this way, but I've been working since I was 11, and it started with babysitting. And then I got my first W-2 type job where I washed dishes at 13 and smelled like French fries all of the time. And, we've talked about your daughter getting kind of her first job recently too. And that's why I say that I'm blessed. At the time, I might have been missing time with my friends or playing sports or whatever I did in my summers, but I learned a really good work ethic, and I had my own money that I had to learn how to spend or what to do with, and the consequences, both good and bad, that came with that. So I know I'm going way far back when we're talking about starting work at 11. I'm 37 now for context, and I started my online business journey at 29. So I've always been kind of an overachiever, trying to be more mature than my age, because that's what was kind of conditioned into me. But basically in 2014, I was looking at my life at 29 years old and thinking, okay, I have a really good gig job career on paper, and it was in finance. So half of my job was consulting with people about their retirement and education planning and all of that fun stuff. And half of my job was supporting this really profitable family-run financial planning practice that was really close to home, and they treated me like family. And on paper, everything was amazing. I got paid decently well, enough so that Wade quit his job the year before in order to become a stay-at-home dad. Once our second child was born, I worked less than 10 minutes from home. So although I had to maybe deal with some snow in the winter, I wasn't having these hour-long commutes or more that a lot of people do in our area. I had somewhat flexibility if I needed to maybe take a day off or work a Saturday or something like that. But the work itself wasn't super fulfilling beyond having these great conversations with clients that were dreaming about their future. That's the part of the gig that I liked, and I liked my coworkers. But I didn't like the compliance hoops we had to jump through, all of the paperwork and like checking boxes and lack of creativity. There was a lot of lack of creativity with that job. And so I allowed myself the opportunity to kind of daydream about a different future. And up until that point, I hadn't allowed myself. I thought, okay, I chose to be this when I grew up, so I have to be this. I had been doing it for almost a decade at that point because I like to start things early. And I thought that I was kind of committed to it until I got to my own retirement age, which hopefully would be early at like 60, right? So another 31 years was staring me in the face of doing the same thing day in, day out, having a little flexibility, enough to taste that freedom, but not the flexibility that I have now where we could really pick up and go anywhere at any time if we wanted to. That was kind of a long answer to that question. And it's just not a real simple answer, but hopefully that lets those that are tuning in learn a little bit more about where I've come from and the fact that I just made a decision one day to open my own mind as to what I wanted and what was possible. And I started then with a freelance writing business. And 7 years after that, I'm, one of the premier teachers in the freelancing space online.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of glossed over that 7 years, which has been a lot of work and quite a journey. And in my mind, where a lot of the kind of the gold is, as someone who can help people who are in limbo or in this curiosity phase decide that they can do this, and that being independent and on their own and having that life that they really want is achievable without having to have a huge investment of money or time or resources or what have you. So along the way, I mean, you started out doing freelance writing, doing virtual assistant services for clients themselves, and then like when did that transition into becoming a teacher?
Yeah. So I actually ended up providing services for almost a solid 5 years. So it's not like I just started doing it for a little bit and then decided, no, I want to make all my money selling courses, which is passive, right? But I did create my first course early on. It was in the same year that I started freelancing. And to my credit, I had a background as a small business owner and in finance, personal finance and business finance. So I understood, I feel like, a lot more than the average person that might break into freelancing today, which I guess just builds some credibility that I knew what I was doing and how to set goals and income and all of the things. So it was about 8 months in between looking into freelancing at all and being able to earn enough income from it myself to put in my notice and kind of quit my day job and then start teaching people. And I, again, didn't set out to teach people. That was actually by accident. And the reason that it even happened is I launched this little website called HorkeyHandbook.com. And I started basically blogging about my journey in addition to writing samples that I could put in front of potential clients. So the very first reason that website was born was to have a place to catalog some online writing samples to prove to potential clients, hey, I can write. And right here is proof that not only do I have decent writing chops, but I have enough technical ability to set up my own website, which I had never done before and intimidated me for sure prior to that point. And we always make things that we haven't done before way harder than they actually are, especially in this day and age. I mean, like we have nothing on the people that were building websites in 1994 or 98 or even 2004. I know it was way harder back then, right? So then I started sharing my journey and I'm like, oh, I learned about an email list. What's this email list thing? Maybe I should launch one. And so I think I launched the website in May of 2014, and I probably started my email list in like July of that same year. And by the end of the year, I had almost 100 subscribers. Pretty big deal. So I had more people than just my mother that were tuning in. But I guess, moral of the story is that I saw that opportunity earlier on. I had no idea what I was going to do with an email list or why it was relevant to my business at the time. But I started something, and it's a lot easier to grow something that you've started than just maybe had a passing thought about. So then people kept asking me all the questions. I was writing income reports at the time. They were kind of a popular fad, still is to some extent, because everybody wants to look under the hood and see the juicy details of how you're succeeding or where your money's coming from or what you're spending it on, for that matter. And so that's why I thought, okay, well, I'm going to just write 30 lessons in the month of November 2014 around freelance writing, and then I'll put it into an email course where people can decide to pay me some money for it. I had kind of a mentor that said, hey, why don't you come out with your first product? And so I guess it wasn't fully instigated on my end, but they planted that seed for me. And then I just took action and made it happen. And I had 5 beta testers that I let go through it for free I was smart enough to be like, oh, well, let's get this in the hands of some people that can give me some feedback. And then they will give me a testimonial if it's any good. And then I started selling it for $25 in December of 2014.
And this was the 30 days to freelance writing?
Freelance writing success. Yep.
Yeah. And you're still selling it today?
Indirectly, yes. But I think we'll probably be bringing it back as a standalone product. Whether or not it has that name, I don't know, but it's included in the fully booked system because writing skills are so powerful to virtual assistants in general. And if I can, for a moment, we haven't talked a lot about the term virtual assistant, but I like to unpack it for people because in my opinion, there's like a ton of services that you can offer. So services is, trading your time and your abilities in return for pay for that client that needs that help in that specific way. And so I use the term virtual assistant very loosely because technically you could be providing copy, you could be doing bookkeeping, you can be doing writing. And once people decide like to specialize, they find their lane, their thing, at least for that period of time, because it can change, then they put a different title on it. But as a whole, we kind of refer to virtual assistant services as anything that you can do online to help another business owner. And you get paid for it. That's the important part. You got to get paid. Otherwise, you're just volunteering, man.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. It's not a charity, and even if you're running a charity, you still need to be thinking about money, right? And you still need to be making
100%. Yeah. If you're not business minded and you have a nonprofit, it's not going to last very long.
No, for sure not. So you launched this first course for freelance writing, and then how long did it take you to start building more courses? Because you ended up with a portfolio of courses that were quite successful.
I did. And again, it was just kind of being open to the next step on my journey in building my business. So I was kind of like openly blogging and then sharing via email about my journey. When I started with freelance writing services, you could get a lot of like one-time gigs, but it was a little bit more rare at that time. And maybe the way that I was looking for clients to build that recurring revenue where it was repeatable. And that was something that was really important to me as I was supporting my family in the background, right? Like I couldn't just piece together writing gigs every month from brand new clients and start over every month. Like to me, that was a little bit scary, a lack of security, all that good stuff. So I was wondering what else that I could do in order to have a more predictable income. And you can totally build a freelance writing business in that way from the beginning, by the way. I just took an indirect path and ended up offering what I consider the time to be a virtual assistant service doing email management and customer service. So I took on that first client in September of 2014. So my first client that I worked with as a writer was in June of 2014. And so it was just a few months later that I was like, okay, I'm going to take the other skills that I have at my disposal and kind of build a diversified income stream from multiple services. Plus, I could try doing something like that as a freelancer that I was used to doing in my day job. And so then I started talking about virtual assistant services as I was blogging and emailing and all the things. And people wanted to know how to do that. So both of it is freelancing. And again, it's providing services. The first one was very specific on writing and getting paid to write online. And then the second course, I took a more, I don't know, general approach to any kind of service. So it was a lot of that foundation of building a freelance business, but then also unearthing kind of the opportunities of what types of services would fall underneath that, which it seems very normal and understandable today, but back then, not so much.
Yeah, that was still new, and there was still this, muddy perception about what a VA really was, right?
Right.
To your credit, you've been part of defining that. And I think the work that you've done recently in the last sort of 6 to 12 months has been even more impactful in helping craft what that perception of a VA. So just for context for our listeners, Gina holds domain authority for pretty much every search term out there around virtual assistants. So she really has been kind of a key member in defining this profession and giving people this opportunity to better their lives and to have that kind of flexibility that they need.
Yeah.
And not because they want Lambos on a beach, and not because it's like sexy, but because these are real people who need that flexibility and can have much better lives, either taking care of their loved ones or being parents or, being military spouses or what have you, or retirees that really have this desire to be able to work around their own constraints. And I think that that's been such an important service part of your business. But if we fast forward to last year, you had a successful business selling courses online. Mm-hmm. And you got to the point where you thought, what's next, right? And in true Gina style, she's, 3 months pregnant and decided to take on this next phase of her journey. So you've built a very successful business. And what was the impetus for you to have that kind of what's next conversation?
That is a good question. And I don't know if I can pinpoint a very specific thing. Maybe you can, having a better recollection of our working relationship together. But I just knew that there was a next thing, that while what I was doing was working, it can always be improved. Right. And so I'm not a fan of, if it's not broke, don't fix it, because I think if you have that mindset, you'll get overrun with your competition and technology changes and all the things, right? Like, we can't be that set in our ways as online business owners, because change is just inevitable and it's happening at a faster pace than ever before. And so instead, I'd rather be proactive about solving future problems or doing the work that I'm doing more efficiently or effectively. And so a year ago, I had this a la carte offering of online courses, like you said. So we had our kind of two staples, one in virtual assistant and one in the freelance writing space as far as starting your business. And then we had started to niche into different specialties. So we had one on social media, another on email management and project management, and then real estate for virtual assistants. Plus, I had taken a look at when you're scaling, you can specialize and increase your rates, or another way to scale, still offering services and building a service-based business, is by having an agency and hiring other people on your team in order to carry out that work. And so we had a virtual assistant agency course too, but it was just kind of out there, all of these things. You could choose your own adventure. We could give you some advice on what to take if you decided to email in. But if you didn't decide to email in, you might have lots of questions on where to get started and what to do next. And that was the impotence for Fully Booked VA, which was born out of you and I brainstorming. So we got started working together because I had something that was telling me we're ready for the next level, but what we're doing right now and maybe the people that I was working with aren't prepared to get there. So let's go outside for help. So one of the things I haven't mentioned yet is I've always worked with some sort of coach. In my personal life, I work out with a personal trainer. I love when people just kind of boss me around and tell me what to do, knowing the goals that I have and them having the education or background or experience and how to get where I want to go. Right. So even though I know how to work out on my own now, I'd still rather go and socialize while I do it and have Cindy just kick my ass, because I'll get in a better workout than I would if I showed up on my own. Plus, having that appointment with her means I have to be accountable to showing up at a certain time versus having all of the excuses get in my way. So anyways, I believe in coaching very much so. And I think life is just better when you do things together, right? Versus all by your lonesome. And so I was looking for a new coaching relationship, and I had Googled strategic coach, and guess who popped up? Stephanie Hayes. And so I probably filled out a contact form or something like that. And then we had a call and we started in one capacity, and it's really evolved where you're kind of the right-hand person in the business now. And you can't leave, because then it's just not going to work out all that well for me.
Okay, so we talked, but you know what I really know about people who show up saying, I want to know what's next.
Yeah.
That they somewhere in here, and perhaps it's not quite clear yet because, you know, we're in our businesses day to day and we don't have, you know, the time or the space to kind of take it apart. Intuitively, I think we all know what's next, right? And we all have a sense of what's missing for us or what's missing for our clients. And there was a little bit of like your intuition that just hadn't sort of fully formulated yet. But I think that there was a desire on your part to introduce a higher level of service to this audience, and knowing that you have this sort of big captive audience. What like you were hearing things from them that you wanted to be able to address. So when we designed this fully booked VA system, as we typically do, we designed it around the things that we heard from you, right? The things that you were desiring. So talk a little bit about what came out of that. What does the new system look like? We launched it at the end of December. What have you learned over the last 6 months?
Well, I think what's interesting is what we set out to launch it as, what we thought it was going to be, is still visible in what we have today, but it's not the exact plan that we had. And again, that's just being flexible, agile, all of the things, and tuning into the people that we were working alongside in order to help them to get to the result that they wanted. So what was missing was that path, kind of that roadmap. What I saw is, the longer you're in business, and if something is working out well for you, the more competitors you're going to end up having too, right? So there's lots of people that are training on all things virtual assistants, and a lot of them getting started as a VA and niching down into different specialties. So I am not super unique anymore in the information that we're providing, but we are unique in lots of other special snowflake ways. So I guess part of the vision was to help people to progress with a specific roadmap or plan in order to get to their personal objectives or goals. And the other part was to build a sustainable, predictable business, because we were selling things. We had a small subscription community, but we weren't necessarily charging enough for it. So it fit, but it didn't fit in the evolution of where we wanted things to go, I guess. So the difference is that everything was sold on its own. Most of our revenue was one time or paid when they purchased something, versus now we have a complete recurring revenue model for the most part. And we're meeting the needs of our customers in that we're giving them that place to start, but we're also painting the picture of what's possible and then helping them to choose their own adventure with support, information, all of the things in order to get them there. So if they really want to succeed as a virtual assistant, there's absolutely no reason being plugged into fully booked VA that they shouldn't. What we probably have known for a long time that holds people back is really mindset more than abilities. And I think that we're able to show up and support them in a much better, more comprehensive way in that area, to, again, ensure successful outcome of why they came to us in the first place.
Yeah, totally. And let's dive into that a little bit, because this is what differentiates you from your competitors, is this sort of next level of heart-centered service. And I use that term a little loosely because it's a term I would have, maybe rolled my eyes at a year ago. But it's like, but it really does sort of honestly describe what I think you bring to the table. And you're so well positioned to be the one who creates this kind of community and this service. So there is a lot of support inside the program, much more so than you might see in a lot of other membership communities. So let's talk a little bit about all the different points that you've brought forward to distinguish this service from just a standalone course.
Yeah. And that, I think, is maybe the impotence, right, that you were talking about.
Yep.
Is I really care about people being successful. So you kind of need to commit to this journey or path in order to be successful. That's one ingredient, but we can bring a lot to the table in helping you to get there as well. So we talk about it as being able to start, build, and scale a virtual assistant business. And again, it's not that I didn't have this vision in the past, because that's why we developed all of these different types of online courses and products. But now we have it like in a very contained environment where somebody can plug themselves in and keep taking the next step in order to get to their desired outcome. So in the starting phase, it's still the fundamentals of what a virtual assistant business looks like, helping you to define your service offerings, get hired by your first client, figure out how to charge, how much to charge, all of those things. And then the building is really building three things: building your clientele, building your skill set, as well as being able to build confidence, which is, again, so key. And then the scale part, we're still working on to some extent. We have the agency course still available for people, as well as, group coaching. And we do specialized both skills training as well as sales type training. And then we're figuring out what is the best way to come alongside people that are in really that later part of their journey. And I think you'll see some exciting things from us later this year on that as well. So that definitely is kind of that starting place, which is amazing. We have a community, which is like a forum text type, which is great for people to ask questions. It's also a great place for them to get accountability from the Horkey Handbook team as well as their peers. And it's wonderful for them to be able to say, hey, here's my work, here's my homework, if you will, and get some review by somebody on our team too. And then once you work your way through the material and do all of the associated action items or homework, which helps you to lay that foundation and get ready to start working with your first client, then at the end of that, you'll take a final exam and we'll actually give you a certification so that we can increase our confidence, right? As well as credibility when we're adding that to our online presence, resume, what have you. And then you unlock all of these fun things so that you can plug yourself into these skills courses that I mentioned earlier: social media and project management and email management. And then also unlocking access to our VA leads. So when you go back to heart-centered work, I do believe that was one thing that I got right from the beginning, and I wanted to pass that on to our community of VAs as well. And so you'll see that in the curriculum, like be of service to your clients, be of service to people in general. And I think that you'll see that that comes back to you in how you build a relationship with that client, as well as get referred and all of the things that come with that too. And one of the ways that I wanted to be of service to my community was to introduce them to actual clients. There's lots of different ways that you can go out there and prospect for clients. But if I'm running in circles with these entrepreneurs and business owners that need quality help, and I know that we have qualified, quality people in our community, why wouldn't I bring them together? And that's no charge to the business owner. And it's just part of your membership when you're part of Fully Booked VA, which I think is kind of a big deal. So they basically built their business by engaging in the system and doing the work and pitching the clients that we brought to the table that need help.
I think the whole point is that you're so immersed in this community and so immersed in this business and this way of life. And you've been listening and listening. And I think that it shows in the way that you've created and designed this whole system that you know what these people are dealing with and struggling with, and you know them intimately. And I think over the last 6 months, being so involved in the program has allowed all of us to really know these clients and know what they're facing. So they come into the program thinking what they need is a whole bunch of tactical skills.
Right.
But what we know after watching is that what they really need is confidence.
Mm-hmm.
Right? They need to know that they're supported. They need to know that they can ask questions. They need to know that they can figure things out. And so that we have these questions all the time about, how am I supposed to go and pitch when what if I don't have the skills that they're looking for? And what we know is that business owners hire based on who you are rather than the checklist of, attributes that you have on your CV. So can we talk a little bit more about that? So how have you designed this program in order to be able to help people move through those mindset shifts that they need to make?
Yeah, I think that in the beginning, it's really, again, putting into practice, taking these smaller actions that will build confidence as well as that foundation of your business. And, you're so right that while a business owner might have like a job doc of different things that they're looking for, they're really looking for somebody that's reliable, that's going to show up, that's eager to learn new things and figure stuff out, and is dependable and all of the things, versus somebody that has the exact credentials on their resume, their CV. You want to believe in somebody's capability and their energy and excitement to help you to get to your goals more than you care if they can tick one in particular box. So coming out of our program, really what we're helping them to do is to alter their mindset and to be of service and to learn how to learn and be resourceful and confident and things like that.
And so you are providing opportunities to come in and to develop skills and to learn more about themselves as well. So I think there's kind of that 1-2 punch, but we've made a very specific decision not to be the people who build like a library of technical courses, right? Or a library of, Canva training, or where we're really relying on our community to kind of bring that expertise in, because there are people out there who are constantly monitoring and updating skills around these things that change all the time. So we've really intentionally positioned the fully booked VA system to be more about giving them sort of the business skills and the practices and the foundation that they can kind of build on. And in the specialization tracks, we are bringing in some of the more focused training, but we're really relying on our community and our network to be able to help us provide that training and also provide opportunities for them to gain more exposure to our audience, right? I want to talk about the people who are in your community. You have had some incredible success stories. You have had some clients who have overcome their own mindset issues and overcome some of these confidence gaps. And I think in every instance, that's happened not because they've taken some type of, 800 hours of technical training, but because they overcame some limiting beliefs on their own part. Talk to me a little bit about some of the things that you're seeing happening with some of the students that are in the system.
Yeah. So one of the people that we have on our sales page is Deborah, right? And I love Deborah's story because she met somebody from the US and she is originally from overseas. And when she came here, she was working in a call center and she knew that there was more to life than that. She was putting in probably pretty long hours, doing work that was not very fulfilling, and stuck to a very concrete schedule. And then she thought, hey, there has to be something else out there for me, much like I did in 2014, right? And so she got plugged into our fully booked VA system. And not only does she earn more money than she ever has before, but she's doing work that she loves each and every day. So I know that she had told us about waking up, being excited to go to work and being of service to her clients. And, to some extent, it's the work that she's doing, but that's a lesser extent to what she's showing up, more of her mission and being able to support and work with people that she really enjoys. So when you break down kind of the work of a virtual assistant, or the reason somebody would want to get into kind of doing this kind of work, the work that you're showing up to do on a day-to-day basis is definitely part of the equation, but it's also getting to choose kind of your colleagues or your coworkers, how you're spending your time, when you're spending your time working. Like, I love how much freedom there is in this type of work. And so that's kind of part of our role, is helping people to see that opportunity and know that there is all of the ability to kind of change the service that they're providing, and the time in order to become a specialist once they've tried that out, right? So there's so many kind of safe ways for them to practice, to figure out this stuff. And remember when I talked about before, feeling like I was trapped into kind of that career choice, being a service provider online, being a virtual assistant, you're not trapped at all anymore.
Unless you trap yourself.
Yeah, that's true. There's always the opportunity to trap yourself.
And that's really good information, because that means that the only thing holding you back is yourself, and that you can make that choice to step out of those beliefs and step out of those things that are constraining you. One of the things that I have always really loved about you and respected about you, this is frankly part of the reason that you and I work together so well, is that you are not someone who gets stuck in and mired by fear. Not to say that you don't have fears, we all do, but you keep moving forward. And to me, that's one of the indicators of your success. Because I know my audience would really love to hear a little bit more about this. Can you talk a little bit about how you navigate and move around fear or second guessing yourself, and like all the things that come up naturally and normally for us? And how have you managed to keep moving forward? Because you make decisions quickly. You are open to navigating in this whole concept of like business being a continuum as opposed to trying to reach. So talk a little bit about how you move around that, because you do it really well.
That's a good question. I mean, when I look at like my strength finder results and things like that, I'm definitely an executor. Like, that's one of my strong personality traits. And then I forget what the term is that they use for it, but basically being a problem solver. So I like to think of business and almost my like personal life of, okay, there's a problem and we need to solve it. So what are our options? And do I get it right every time? The first time that I try and solve that problem? Absolutely not. But I'm not afraid to get it wrong. And maybe that's the difference. And I heard this crop up in kind of our online business world. You have to make mistakes, and you have to, you learn the most from your failures, right? So it's a lot of that is repackaging. And again, it comes back to mindset. So you can either be afraid to take action in the first place because you don't know what the outcome is going to be and you don't want to fail, or you can flip that script and say, okay, well, I'm going to fail as much as I need to in order to succeed. And that, I think, is just really ingrained in me now, where I don't actually think about it all that much. I just know that if I am agile and if I can make decisions with the right amount of information, not every detail that possibly can be gleaned about that topic or question, but enough to make an educated decision and keep moving forward, that's what I'm supposed to do. It feels right to just keep charging ahead and keep solving problems. And again, that maybe goes back to the whole like journey versus destination type of thing. I know a lot of people struggle with what's enough, and I've struggled with this too, but I'm very goal oriented. That's not a surprise to anybody that's been listening to this point. And once you've achieved kind of the wildest goals that you had for yourself, for many of us, we just dream bigger, right? So income wise, between two companies that I owned at the time, an online business in 2019, we grossed over $1.2 million. When I was sitting at my desk in finance in 2014 and thinking about starting a freelance writing business, I was not thinking seven figures at any point. I was thinking, how do I earn $5,000 a month? Because we had trimmed our expenses down to absolutely nothing, the bare essentials. So when I started my journey, I was thinking about $5,000 a month, $60,000 a year. And then within 4-5 years, I had 2 businesses that had expenses, mind you, but we were able to produce enough revenue of over $1.2 million. Like, that blows my mind. So it comes back down to like the what's enough. And for me, it's not super tied to like a dollar amount anymore. It's really that thrill of the chase and the thrill of figuring out these problems. And then again, pair that with being of service to people. We have an opportunity, and I think that we're seizing it, to make a difference in people's lives. Because what we were conditioned to believe, if we revisit that part of our conversation of finish high school and go to college and maybe get married and, have kids and get an SUV and all the debt, like, that's not working for most people. And I think that we're finally waking up to that. I love reflecting about like history and industrial revolution and all these things, like why we as women first entered the workforce was to cover for the men that were overseas. Not that women didn't show up and work in different capacities before that. Think raising a family, working on a farm, all of those things. It takes more than just the man, for sure. But then you go to like the 1980s, and I think, if I remember correctly, that's when dual income was really, really popular. And things like, daycare started to be really, really popular kind of when I was growing up. And, I've told this story before. They don't live next to us anymore, but some really good friends and that were neighbors of ours for a few years, they both commuted over an hour to work every day, had 2 young kids. They would drop them off at like 6 o'clock in the morning to get to work on time, work all day long, pick them up at 6 o'clock. And they were young at this time. So they would go home, have dinner, and put them to bed. So they basically would not see their kids 5 days out of the week. And then you cram everything into the weekend, all of your personal responsibilities, mowing the lawn and paying the bills and maybe doing something fun, right? To wake up and do it again. And we're finally at that point where we're not okay with that anymore.
Yes.
So that's the opportunity of us being able to be of service, is to show there's a different way. Yes. I'm actually reading this book right now. That's really good. It's the Fast Track Millionaire. And you don't have to agree with everything that's in any book, but what I like about this author is he's bringing this definition of wealth to the masses that's different than the definition we're used to. The definition we're used to is wealth is money, right? Like, it's money in the bank, it's your net worth, it's whatever. But he talks about wealth being 3 things. The first being your relationships, the second being your health, and then the third being freedom. And so the first one being your relationships, this is the person I didn't want to be. And I'm naturally drawn to be probably a workaholic. That's why I went to rehab in 2019, right? So like, my journey is not perfect, and we can unpack more parts of it at a different time. But I'm an action taker, I'm an executor, but I can do that to a fault as well. But I knew early on that one of the reasons I wanted to be self-employed is, while I could climb the corporate ladder, I didn't want to be one of those, and at the time, white dudes that ended up in their late 50s, divorced, and had no relationship with their kids, but they had some money, right?
Yeah.
And this is what you're actually helping me to do right now. And that started with my recent maternity leave with Hazel, is like totally unplugging and really putting my family first and giving up some of the control and trusting other people to carry out the work I would have normally done myself and having to have my hands in. So anyways, relationships, core of it. So like the myth that he's busting is like, money doesn't buy happiness. It doesn't. So that's not a surprise to us. There's all that research and the studies around like $70,000 a year is kind of that cutoff where all your basic needs are met. And if you make more money than that, you're not any happier than somebody that makes less than that. So relationships are a big component of it, and being able to, like, pour into your children. You got married for a reason. You probably should want to spend some time with that person. And then the health is the next one. And this is one that's been on high up on my agenda for some time. I'm getting back into shape right now after gaining too much weight with the baby we just had. But if you don't have your health, life isn't very much fun, right? So it's kind of an important part of the wealth triad or concept. And then that third one is the freedom. And I feel like that's where our opportunity to be of service is to paint that picture of freedom which is to have your own business. And in our case, it's a service-based business because that's the easiest way, in my opinion, to break into online business. Online business is kind of the way of the future to some extent. And there's so many different ways to succeed and become wealthy. Yeah, I just get really excited about it because you can start your journey as a virtual assistant, but you don't have to end your journey there either. But it can help you to move away from that 9 to 5. It can help you to have that time for your relationships and for your well-being, for your physical health and emotional health.
Well, I think what's so interesting too is that when you and I came together, at first I was like, oh, okay, she makes courses for VAs. And then as we started to really dig in and define this together, and it's so interesting how we make such a good team, because I'm not a person who I am typically a lone wolf, and I usually, kind of work on my own, but it's the very rare occurrence where I find someone where we have this kind of synergy. And one of the things that really became clear to me is that the work that you're doing in teaching people how to be virtual assistants is not a lot different than the work I do in teaching business owners how to be business owners. And there's so much overlap, and there's so much continuity that a lot of the work, like the stuff that I teach my clients, I'm teaching your clients too. And you could probably teach my clients. So although these, my clients have identified as business owners, and your clients are just sort of sticking their toe in the water and wondering like what this all means, then they haven't really identified VA as a business owner yet, but they kind of are, right?
We're helping them.
Yeah. And I think that's what's so unique and distinctive about your place in this market. Let's go back and talk just a minute about can we acknowledge and recognize, because I think this is such an interesting part of the conversation for the people who will be listening. You basically rebuilt your business.
Yeah.
Launched an entirely new product and completely changed everything, and then had a baby like a couple months later. I mean, first of all, you have a lot of courage, but secondly, I want to it's all wrapped up in this idea of building teams, right? And I think a lot of business owners sit on the precipice of building a team. And in fact, it's relevant to the conversation with VAs too, because VAs are often the first hire that a business owner makes who is starting to dip their toe into scaling. So talk to me a little bit about what has made it possible for you to be able to build an entirely new business and then go and have a baby and then come back. Like it's crazy, but it worked because of your attitude and your perspective and your understanding of what teams and people mean to your business.
Well, I think it wouldn't have happened without team, right? Without you and Laura and the other people that were willing to burn the old business and that whole Phoenix thing, rising from the ashes. And I had some doubt along the way. We've had conversations on WhatsApp that's should we have just kept doing what was working? Are we doing the right thing? And then we get some confirmation each time that we are doing the right thing. And this is the right move for our business. But I basically canceled $20,000+ in monthly recurring revenue from the previous membership that we had. And we paused selling our product lineup because we retired it in preparation of the launch. There was no guarantee that any of this was going to work out. And honestly, if we look back year over year, our income is still down. We figured out the problem and we're on our way to fixing that, because it's not that we're not attracting the right people or enough people. With fixing that one little problem, we would be doing even better than we were a year ago. So people are probably like, well, what's the problem? Well, we identified that our affiliates brought in a certain amount of our revenue, I think 40%. And there may be some miscommunication with how that they're talking about our current program. Not everybody stays on your email list and maybe receives the updates that are intended for them. There's a lot of reasons maybe why, but it's an easy fix. It's a super easy fix, right? That we just had to identify. And so how did I do it? How did I blow up the business, have a baby, and trust that everything would work out?
And this is a mindset conversation entirely, right?
Yes.
Because hiring people is about mindset for you and for them.
Well, I think going back to when we started working together, I knew something was wrong, right? And that I wanted something to be different, both in the way that I showed up to serve our community, but also in the way that I showed up to serve my family. And so it took that period of time in 2019 to really shake shit up and be like, hey, I have a drinking problem. And a big part of that is because I work all the time and I'm stressed out because I'm, trying to be everything to everybody. And then I took a step back after that, continued to move things along and grow. And then I felt another like warning flag, but it wasn't because of me making decisions out of stress or anything like that. It was just maybe seeing, hey, there's an improvement we can make. Like there's a different way that we can serve our community and that I can serve my family and at the same time. And what was powerful about taking a maternity leave is with both other kids, and our daughter's going to be 8, our son is going to be 10 this year, and then our youngest is just 3 months old. I had like 6 weeks with both of them. So I was working in that previous career in finance. Technically, I was self-employed. So I had to self-fund my own my own maternity leave, going without a paycheck at that time for any period of time. We were pretty much living paycheck to paycheck then. Like I made enough. I was on track, but I couldn't go for months and self-fund a maternity leave without some other big trade-off in our lives, depleting all of our cash reserves or something like that. And so when I was thinking about having this baby, I wanted it to be different. And I wanted to take what in the United States is a lengthy maternity leave, being about 3 months. And actually it ended up being about 3.5 months because I was so tired of being pregnant at the end that I had to like bow out 2 weeks early. I was convinced that Hazel was going to arrive earlier than her due date. She arrived
we all were
hours after her due date. And it was because honestly, like I found you and we were able to prepare the team in a way that you guys could take over the day-to-day stuff and I could totally unplug. And I felt that you were the right person at the helm of being able to continue to lead the charge. We had figured out this giant puzzle problem together with fully booked VA versus what we were doing that year before. And I don't know, just a lot of faith and trust that things were going to work out, man.
There's an element of you just having to decide, right? And I think that that's relevant. That's relevant to other business owners. That's relevant to the VAs who are just getting started. That's that mindset piece, is just deciding, like having good information, but also deciding that you're going to let it happen, right?
Yeah. I mean, it didn't hurt that I had some money in the bank. Like we have a little bit of cash on hand so that we could get through a year or two. Again, if we went back to the bare necessities of life and lived off of $5,000 or $6,000 a month, that helps to give a little bit of peace of mind. But I think the other mentality that I've adopted is instead of thinking about what's the worst that can happen from doing a thing, I really have thought about, well, what's the best possible outcome? So if we wouldn't have made the change, that's really the worst that could have happened, is we didn't make a change and we were just continuing to hum along. But we're realizing part of what's the best that can happen, and we have no idea where it's going to go.
Well, we have lots of ideas.
We're trying to dream bigger right now, right? We had this conversation recently about dreaming bigger and how this business can serve a role in that, and we can serve the people within our community at the same time. But even what our dream bigger is, there's bigger than that.
Yeah. And you and I had a conversation the other day, and to me, it was a bit pivotal. It was like an off the cuff. I mean, we talk all day, every day, even on the weekends, but I think it was on a Sunday. I don't know. I can't remember, but it was just that suddenly, I think I'd listened to a podcast episode.
Yep.
And
Vampire Flippers one.
Yeah. And I was just suddenly like, oh, Gina, this is where we need to move our mindset to. Mm-hmm. Because we were still stuck in the day-to-day, the like incremental, that had to be the be all end all. But oh my gosh, there's this whole other level we can get to. And I honestly believe that I'm a mountain biker, and it's like the same kind of thing with mountain biking. As long as you're looking right where you are, mm-hmm. You'll never make the drop. You'll never get over that obstacle. You'll never do the big tricks. In order to be able to do the big tricks, you have to look like 5-10 feet in front of you at where you're going.
Right. Yep.
And it's the same concept where I kind of all of a sudden realized, gosh, we got to look at where we're going. And then everything kind of changed. Like this obsession with all the little details changed. And I recognized that what we had built in this foundation of what we've built in Fully Booked VA is so good. And putting any more into it is actually going to detract from its success.
Yeah.
So we know a lot, we know enough, we know, I mean, there's always more to know, but focusing on that bigger thing, that next thing, without it robbing us of the success we can have right now, that's that balance, right?
Yep.
That's that balance. And we've also learned to just like take a breath and recognize that it take a bit of time, right?
And it goes back to not being super tied to both the outcome and how to get there, right? Because when we first started working together, we had talked about some revenue goals for the company as it was. Yes, we were going to make this change from the old way to the new way, which is Fully Booked VA, but we were still just talking about that. And I think when you were talking about this pivotal mindset change, it was looking at like, what else can we do? Like, let's look at what we've just experienced and what we're learning is out there. So for a lot of people, being a virtual assistant is a new opportunity. Again, rewind to 2014. Freelance writing was never on my radar. Like I understood that people got paid to write maybe fiction books and maybe they were a journalist and worked at a newspaper, but I had no idea that everybody needed content on their websites or email sequences or sales pages or all of the different opportunities that exist as a freelance writer in offering that service to clients. And that's what we're going through once again in a completely different way. And that's super exciting.
This rediscovery of like the opportunity out there. Totally.
But again, you got to get started with that first step before you can unveil that 5 or 10 steps further. So it's the balance. You said like looking forward as to what's to come, but also like executing on that step that you're on.
And not rushing ourselves. And I think this is one of the things that I talk a lot about in my own business and in the work I do with my clients is like adopting this kind of slow business mentality, right? Like we always think that we have to be 10,000 steps ahead. We always have to be rush. But what I know is real is that we can't do that. We can't do that. And we have to percolate, right? We are in so much better a position if we let things happen at the pace that they're going to happen. And to the point where we get the right information and the information that's going to help us move forward. So this balance of like progression and forward movement with like breathing, like taking a breath and letting ourselves, we have these stories that we need to be constantly doing something else and doing something more and what have you. But if we can just sit and look at this success that we've had and understand what's next, like when it comes, then we're like, all right, there it is. And letting that happen rather than forcing it is super important. And I think we can take the pressure off of people thinking that they have to do everything all at once. So what's next? I mean, we are right in the middle of a launch of kind of that next phase of Fully Booked VA and in true form to everything we've been talking about. We've, not been afraid to make adjustments and make corrections when we're confident that there's something better for everybody. So the launch is going to happen. Then what?
Well, we have been focused on the launch and then what we need to put into place for kind of that evergreen next step. So that we have hopefully this burst of results and then it'll slow down, but still our trickle will be faster or more than our trickle right now, if that makes sense. And then we're going to take a little time, supposedly, to catch up on our inboxes or something and relax. But we're looking at the next phase.
There's some really interesting progression from what we've learned about Fully Booked VA and learned from Fully Booked VA. So all of the different sort of arms that we can reach out to that community even further.
Well, we made some purchases recently. We dropped about $5,000, a little bit more on 5 websites. And one of them is about manscaping that everybody in our sphere of influence is extremely ecstatic about. So basically, we've talked about getting started in online business, offering services. Well, that's just one way to make money online. And our next play is potentially to renovate websites. So purchase a website, which is an asset, digital real estate, and then put all of our skills to use that we know how to do in order to improve a website or a company or a brand. And then we get to decide, do we want to flip it? Do we want to resell it for more money than we purchased it for? Or do we want to develop this portfolio? And I think we're both leaning towards developing a portfolio of real estate assets, unless we need to trade up. And so if we sold a property, it would be to, earn more money to reinvest into another one. And so we're seeing Horkey Handbook, fully booked VA as a way to pay the bills, I guess, kind of our day job right now, and potentially a way to earn some income that we can reinvest into this next phase of the business. But the great thing is that this next phase of the business could create opportunities for our community, for us to do what, like an incubator type of program or a paid internship, where we can teach them these hard digital marketing skills on a brand that isn't our primary one. So our primary brand is Horkey Handbook. It's, teaching all things virtual assisting to our community. And so if we have a website about shaving your balls, we'll have to.
That website, by the way.
Never. No. So we bought 5 websites, and we bought one on manscaping. That's the nice way of saying taking care of what's down there. We have, that should be like a tagline. We have one that's on like all things coffee, comparing, like, these are affiliate marketing websites, or they can be monetized using ads like AdSense or advertising for specific companies. So we've got the ball trimming, we've got the coffee one. We have one on indoor gardening. We have one around like gifts for teachers. So super, super niche specific. All of these are. And then the last one is on bicycle parts. So while we have some experience or interest in some of these topics, other ones like just we know we could do something with regardless of what the niche is. The very first one we bought was trimmerweb.com. Go and check it out. We haven't done anything with it yet, but we're going to. And it was just the most off the wall niche. And it was at a price where we could totally afford it. I think we paid like $750 for it, $750. And again, like, you've got all of these brilliant friends that specialize in things like SEO and Facebook ads and copywriting and all of these really core skills that lead to the success of a brand, web design. And it's a bunch of women too that are talking about men taking care of their hair down there. And there'll be a lady brand in the future because we're totally committing to this. And as Stephanie said, we're never going to sell it because we want to have our success story be around a ball trimming website.
So here's the interesting thing. Yes, this is an opportunity. Yes, people can make money flipping websites. But where it became interesting to us is this alignment piece.
Yeah.
So we like the idea on its own. But then when we started to really percolate this idea and start to really think about it, it's so perfect for us because we already have all these skills. We know how to make an online business successful, right? We know how to build an online business. We know all the pieces of it. What we didn't know were the acquisition and the sale, right? Like, what does that market look like? That was new to us. There's a whole marketplace that exists around, and a whole like industry that exists around flipping these digital properties. And it's really about flipping businesses.
And I've done this twice. I've built both of them from scratch. But when I was in finance, I had a book of business, basically the clients that I had and the assets that were under my management. And I was able to sell that to the office that I worked as a part of. So that was my first kind of foray. And the second one was the other online business that I had. And I built that with a partner and then sold out of my half. And she now has 100% of that. So I've been through a little bit of the process, but definitely never as far as doing due diligence on making a purchase of an existing business. And then the renovation part is going to be new for us, even though we've done it on our own thing, right? keep going.
But it put us in a position like a lot of the people that were starting out doing this stuff had never had experience building an online business. So we were already in a good position. But what really sealed the deal for us was looking at this like two things. One, the integration with our own community and creating almost this internship opportunity, because that is gold for anyone who has entered the market to be a VA. And one of the real like anxieties that they have is getting the experience
Right.
they want.
Goes
Right.
back to that confidence and that mindset. Like, I haven't done this thing before. And so in our fully booked VA system, we're trying to give them as many opportunities to kind of practice as they can, but not everybody needs to launch a website and have, content marketing game plan or whatever. Right. So this gives us some real tangible content marketing businesses anyways to teach and then give people a safe place to practice. Because if somebody doesn't post the right thing on social media about ball trimming, like, nobody's going to die. It's going to be fine.
Just as an aside, these are actually like legitimate opportunities. And all of these businesses have traffic and growth and that sort of thing. So
Revenue.
Manscaping is becoming a thing. So that was one of the pieces that was so interesting to us. But the other piece that I thought was really interesting about these opportunities is that we had our eyes on creating almost a B2B offering down the road for business owners who are also looking to hire, because I know those are my clients and I know that they are in this position where they're like, oh my gosh, I don't have time. I don't know what to teach them. I don't know. So there was this opportunity to create
fullybuiltteam.com coming soon.
But what I thought was the opportunity was that a lot of these people who kind of buy and sell and flip web properties are all about finding the cheapest resources to do the work. And what I really like is the idea of taking these really high-end professional resources that we've been using on our own business that are like a team already, and figuring out how we can get them to carve away a service in a box that we can basically just apply to each of these new properties. And so practicing putting that framework and that team in place to be able to just like run through these things and probably cost the same amount that we would be paying if we hired a lower cost resource, but getting a whole lot more for that. Right.
Right. I mean, if somebody knows what they're doing, they can implement it in a lot less time than maybe somebody that doesn't and is kind of learning as they go. What's cool about the kind of family of professionals that really came from previous relationships of yours is that many of them either have an agency model or the potential to have an agency model. So another win in their court, besides offering this productized service to hopefully 100 different websites that we're going to accumulate and own over time, is the fact that they can also use them to train their own team, right? Yes. And then we can extrapolate on that in training our community. And then guess what? Our community can be this kind of new version of the team that we started this whole process with, that we can give the gift of to another business owner that needs this help.
Yeah, there's all this potential, and we're going to give ourselves some time to breathe and hit the ground running with sort of this next phase, maybe in Q3, and maybe even sooner than that if we get really excited. But I love this idea of being able to offer more really efficient and like cost-effective services, but with a team of resources that are not cheap.
Right. And then also the person that's delivering those services is still getting paid well for their time. Because I think that's what's missing. And when we were talking earlier, I meant to bring this up. You had talked about me kind of being integral in defining what a virtual assistant is and spreading some of the good news on this topic. And one of the things that I feel very convicted of is ensuring that people are getting a fair exchange of value for the services. So they're bringing services to the table. They're helping clients with specific things that they need in order to maintain or grow or whatever the case may be, but they should get paid well. It's not a race to the bottom. Being a virtual assistant doesn't have to mean cheap labor like the 4-hour work week from Tim Ferriss would want you to think. And he's a great guy, super brilliant, love that book. So nothing against that whatsoever. It's just that mentality that many business owners have after reading that book is that the only way to be successful is to go offshore and get cheap resources. And that's not true. We do have a global economy. We can work with business owners and VAs and a team all over the world. But I just have this firm belief that there is a fair exchange of value that can be represented there.
Yeah, 100%. And I can tell you that the team that is going to work with you is far more motivated by the challenge and the excitement of the work you're creating and you being a really great person to work with than the fact that they get paid a gazillion dollars, right? Okay, listen, we are like a million hours past where we intended to stop, but this is obviously we could talk for 10 more hours. And I look forward to us launching our own show where we're going to start to document and talk through this journey that we're going through with the integration of fully booked VA and the VA and the fully booked team and the website flipping and all of this stuff coming together in this really beautiful package. And I just can't wait to see that evolve. Thank you so much for making the time today. I kind of told you had to, so there it is. But going forward, what would you really want to share with our listeners that would inspire them to continue down this path of building out their own team and building out their own freelance business?
I think you should define what wealth means to you. And, what I shared earlier was this triad relationship of relationships and health and then flexibility or freedom. To me, that kind of encompasses it. And again, it pulls away like that dollar value. It's really not about the money side of things, provided that your needs are met. And it's more about like the life that you want to live. And then that's your problem that you get to solve that equation. You don't have to be super stuck on the final outcome or really how you get there. It's just, what do you envision for yourself? How is that better than where you're at today? And what's that next step that you can take to realize it?
Yeah. And continue along your continuum rather than, trying to always feel like you need to arrive. Right.
Yeah. I mean, life is no fun when you're stressed out all the time.
No,
so
not at all.
Stop and smell the roses. How many cliches can we break out on a podcast?
Okay. We're going to have to cut it off. I know that we could talk forever. Thank you so much for being here. We'll put all the links in the show notes where our listeners can go and find more about you and find more about Horkey Handbook and about Fully Booked VA. Been such a great conversation, and make sure and you go and check out some of the stuff that Gina has written about her own journey, and she's written a book. And then she's got tons of resources available to you. And then finally, I'd love for you to join us for our next episode where we're going to be speaking to Aidan Napalm. Aidan's a professional speaker, executive coach, and social dynamics expert that works with passionate leaders who wants to make an impact on their work, teams, and organizations. So actually a really good fit to the conversation we've been having today. If you're a leader who is so ready to perform at the very top of your game, make sure that you tune in next week. And thanks for being here. If you've enjoyed today's content, I'd love for you to give us a review on whatever platform you're on. This helps us share our stories with an even bigger audience. So until next time, keep building, keep dreaming, and keep being real.